So look, born and raised in Jonesboro, Georgia. Anybody know where that is? Anybody that lives in Georgia knows where Jonesboro is. Actually, I live in McDonough now. Have a grandbaby that's having her 3rd birthday, which I didn't forget. Let's just say I didn't plan appropriately. So yes, I will be fighting Atlanta traffic to get back there for 7 o'clock. I also know you guys have been here tuned in and listening all day. I didn't mean to advance that. So Brandon Clay, born and raised here, been in the industry, which I'll talk a little bit more about my specific background. But apologies, I didn't get to hear everything today, but I love what I think Tim and Bob were saying and what Steven were talking about, because I think this industry is at another point of inflection. So I usually like to catch the room a little bit, not to put anybody on the spot per se at an individual level, but I didn't get to hear some of the things you guys may have talked about earlier. But how many people have been in any part of this industry more than 10 years? More than 10 years, more than 10 years. Okay, so 2. Less than or between 5 and 10. Okay, 5 and 10. Between 1 and 5. Okay, and how many that this is actually like their first year and just getting really started in all of this? Okay, the reason I like to read the room is my father-in-law talks all the time about prognosis without diagnosis is malpractice. So I don't want to go above the room by way of some of the information that I might share, but I also don't want to be so remedial that the old schoolers in here that have been doing this 10, 15, 20 years will say, what in the world, can we move on? Because the goal for me anyway, and I'm a lot like Steven, I'm sort of in what I'll call legacy mode. And again, I'll get to my specific background, but I've been doing this Medicare very specifically for 26 years and have seen it come through a lot of changes. That's why I say we're at another point of inflection. But for those of you that are 1 to 5 years, this is an amazing time to be involved in any of this. So part of what I want to do today is probably about 40-ish minutes. I won't go the whole hour. I know everybody's looking like, oh, I got to get that traffic, 285, 400. I've got to make my way through 3 zones of traffic, and I have the Peach Pass. Anybody have the Peach Pass? Okay, well, how many people are living in Georgia? Raise your hand. Okay. How many people are from other states? Where did you come from? Bob and Tim, right? Julia and Tim. Okay. Where'd you come?
North Carolina, both of us.
Okay, what part of North Carolina?
Greensboro, right in the middle.
Got it. Greensboro love Charlotte, by the way. Anybody else? Who came further than that? Where'd you come from?
Just from South Carolina. I came 3 hours.
What part of South Carolina?
At the top of South Carolina, Gaffney.
Okay, so in that upstate Rock Hill and all that.
That's far.
Oh, that's a nice little ride you just took now. That's all right, thank you.
Pensacola, Florida.
Pensacola, Florida. Why would you leave Florida to come to this dry heat?
For this experience.
Awesome, Bert. Anybody in other states?
This lady came from Pennsylvania.
PA, so I'm going to Pittsburgh next week, as a matter of fact. So, wow. So, you're here from Pittsburgh and you flew down because...
I'm brand new. I just passed my exam on Monday. And
Clap it up for Sherry, right? Woo! West Virginia, where? Mountain Mama, Country Roads, Take Me Home. Little John Denver. Yeah, look, get used to me quick. Because there are like 20 Brandons in my head and they're all saying, can I say that? Can I do this? It's going to be fast and furious. West Virginia, PA, awesome. Sherry just passed her test. Again, inflection point, best time I've ever seen to be in this industry. Best time. So, as you'll see here, and I'll fancy myself a little bit here by way of being a storyteller, a strategist, and a coach, but the goal would be both by way of entertaining, empowering, and enlightening to get you to see this thing in its broadest possible context. Because if you see it in terms of the opportunity, then you'll know why you're doing the things you're doing. Because has anybody who, for the first time, or even the 5th time, or the 10th time, started doing their certifications yet for Medicare? Fun? Past day hip. Everybody give Donna some love in the house. And normally you would think like we're doing like T-League baseball. They just hit the ball off the tee, but let's clap anyway. A-hip passing it is a big deal. Especially if you've never done it. Now, for those of us that have done it a bunch, it feels like a nuisance. Except 2 years ago, I flashed through the screens while I was on a conference call on a Zoom, because I've got to certify to keep my renewals going too. And I'm flashing through, and then I just got to the test. I just wanted to get to the test and take it. I didn't pass it. And I'm like, wait a minute, now I'm some big time Medicare guru and I can't pass the test? Point is, you got to take it seriously. Point is, it's a valuable test, especially for those that are learning, because that stuff will become valuable. Some of it, yeah, is a little bit filler and not probably that important. Best time to be in this industry. So, as my old expression is, don't whine and cry, certify. And for those of you that are maybe here today making decisions as to whether to partner with 360 Financial, part of the reason I love these guys, and I've known them now for years, and we're partnered in affiliation, but this is their business and their entity. And I don't go on the stump for people, because I think at the end of the day, you hear what they have to offer. What I know about the events they do like this, they don't hold back. It isn't the infomercial to then sell you the $9,000 course. It is hardcore. Here's what you'd have to do it. And then in the areas where you do need to plug into people like Stephen, you'd be able to do it. So the stuff that the guys just shared from Greensboro a moment ago, if you go to YouTube, people are selling courses that just give you that much information. And so if you take it, embrace it, and use it, I'm imagining that enough of what you learned today would be enough for you to take your business to the next step. And Luis, good to see you again, right? It's Luis, right? You live here, right? But I met him in Vegas. So awesome. All right, so I'm going to move forward. So this is my background and experience. So I started as a Medicare agent in 1996. I know everybody's thinking, no, ain't no way this man's past 30, but that's okay. It's just all the nice shining bald head. Look, this is a choice. It is what it is. But I then became a national director. I worked for United Healthcare is where I started. Then I went to Cigna, regional director in some of their very first Medicare plans when they started. And then went to as a national director, as was outlined, for a company that most of you might not know, except one or two of the old schoolers, Care Improvement Plus, which started chronic illness special needs plan. So you might as well get used to that nomenclature. You're going to hear it a lot as you get into your business. And then dual special needs plans for Medicare, Medicaid. So to Luis's point, I'd help build, develop, and do distribution for those. And then in 2016, and this is where I'll turn a little bit of a corner, because it's how I met Matt. I was working for a company that focused on final expense. I had written a book in 2011 called 6 Hours to Six Figures. Yeah, Amazon, look it up, all those things. Probably 40,000 agents have gone through the training. I love final expense because it's a porch hopping, door knocking way to get money coming in through life insurance. So I love what David Duford is doing. But then, to the point I think you're all hearing here today, once you build that solid foundation of activity, you should be maximizing whatever is in that house. And final expense, anybody selling final expense right now at all? Hands up, final expense. Tim, what do you think about final expense?
I think it's great.
I think it's great too.
Not as good as Medicare.
Well, and tell me why, Tim. He said it's not as good as Medicare, but tell me why, and I have my thoughts.
Residuals.
Oh, residuals. Lifetime residuals. But here's what I like about final expense. It's the easiest to learn, but it is the bleeping hardest to sell. Anybody? Medicare, on the other hand, is the hardest to learn. Maybe besides annuities, the way Stephen outlined it, but it is the easiest to sell. And then it actually leads you to renewals, as Tim outlined. But here's what I tell you. I would rather know that you know how to go out there and get the hardest sale, because no one else is actually trying to get the hard one. Everybody wants to figure out how to get, quote unquote, and I'm a Medicare guy, the easy one. So 6 Hours to Six Figures was written and built for final expense agents so they could actually take the hard work they've done to sell that final expense policy and layer on compliantly, and that was a thing back in 2011, and it's a thing in 2022, compliantly layer on Medicare so they could increase their revenue. You mentioned about lead cost. There was a 3.6 or something around if you did it through direct mail, which I agree, you guys, is agrarian, it's old school. People still do it. Old school rules, new school tools, but when you do it using digital, and I forgot what your cost was, but your revenue went up 4 or 5 fold. It was like 11,000, right? But imagine then on that lead, you sell Medicare. Now your acquisition cost goes even further and your revenue went even higher. Your stick rate, persistency, pay through on final expense, which normally has a fairly high get out of here rate. But then you might then, just through the point of, oh, by the way, I have a way to get you into the annuity space. All those oh, by the ways will then make your lead generation more effective, more efficient, because you're now maximizing. And in the case of being able to plug and play, you don't have to learn everything. I think that's the dizzying part about this industry right now, is there's so much media around how much money people are making and how they're doing it. You're trying to figure out still how to get to point A. Celebrating Sherry getting licensed, clap, clap, clap. Celebrating Donna getting your AHIP, clap, clap, clap. And then you're like, but now I've got kits. Aetna was here. They armed me and ready with PPOs, FMOs, HBOs, Showtime, whatever else they're given. Actually, by way of utility bills now on these plans, they are paying for Showtime. You see that, right? This has gotten off the charts compared to what happened when I started developing plans. And I didn't mean to go ahead. So I started working with final expense agents, and it exploded. And I'm going to do a little something here, because I know you mentioned social influencers and that you don't take credit for what people do. You just know you were there when. I did the first 8% Nation with Cody. So go back, it's out there, YouTube somewhere. And it was the time I asked the first time. It was 1,000 people in the room. Grant Cardone was on his way. Ray Lewis was there. It was a who's who. The place was pretty packed. This kid had lots of guts, and I've talked to a lot of the other influencers and helped them as well. I'm not a social media person. I love it. But for me, I monetize this industry a little different way. But I love how influencers engage to educate, to ruminate, and then let people see what's happening in their industry, and then they can pick and choose their partner and grow from there. But I've been part of 4 of his 6 or 3 of his 5. I've missed 2 of them. But part of the very first one, and that's where I asked 1,000 agents, how many of you in here have a 6-figure income, have ever earned one? And 70% of the room stood up, because at some point they'd all done some amount of good work somewhere in the car industries, otherwise. But then it was the loaded gun question. How many of you have a 6-figure renewal? There were 9. One of them was an annuity agent, and the other 8 were all Medicare. So what I'm going at there is, if you've been in this industry 3 to 5 years and your renewal is not 6 figures, we have to check some things, because it should be there, okay? So now my role now is with one of the larger groups called AmeriLife, consolidation. There's a lot of acquisition stuff, but I was CEO for SMA. So now we're gonna run fast here. So I always tell agents, and this is Mario Andretti, how many people's head are spinning with how much they've learned already today? And then it's 5 o'clock and I've got this live wire guy yelling in my ear about how good Medicare is. We're at an inflection point. I've never seen anything quite like it. But I'm like Mario Andretti. If everything seems under control, you're not driving fast enough. You should always be just a little bit nervous that you're out of your comfort zone. Because everything you own is in your comfort zone, but I can imagine everything you desire in this life is outside of it. And everything you ever achieved was you being awkward in the consciously incompetent phase, but you knew that you didn't know. And then you go find out information. You learn something. You come to seminars like this. So when I see you sitting here, I know you're the one thing that matters. Hungry. Hungry for answers. And there's 1,000 of them flying around in the room like ether. And now you're trying to grab onto them and make them assimilate and actualize in your life. But if you're not just a little bit nervous, push, okay? So now we're going to talk about how things work. And this is a little bit about your goals. If I'm racing around the track, and there's a theme to this because I'm doing something else for AmeriLife, but if I tell you that we're going to go around the track, how do I know my formula for going around that track? Or if 2 trains are leaving, one from Chicago, one from Rock Hill area of South Carolina, how do I know when they're going to pass each other? Anybody remember that old equation? It's speed times time equals distance. Speed, how fast, time, how long, distance, how far. So if you put your own individual goal, like right now, if I said AEP, for those of you that are going to be involved in the AEP, it could be around annuities, it could be around final expense, it could be a dollar amount. That's your distance. So if we, and this is the AmeriLife or what we're doing, it's going to be your effort times 8 weeks of the AEP, and it's going to end up being a number of applications you want. Would anybody that's about to prepare for the AEP be willing to share, and I know it's an open forum, what their goal is for the AEP, how many they want to write? Anybody care to share? Anybody care to share what they wrote last year? AEP. If you could do 50, I'll do it like this. If you could write 50, how many people would be happy with 50? Brand new. What's your name? Trisha. Trisha would write 50, she'd be thrilled. And that actually on a first-year agent would be an amazing AEP. How many would like to, and if we take the average now, it's 600 if you write somebody that's turning 65 or new to Medicare Advantage. It's 300 if they're moving musical chairs from Aetna to Humana, from Humana to United, from United to Cigna, whatever that is. It's 300 that you know you're going to get paid, and we're going to talk about this too. I will do it. No, I won't do it yet. So if Trisha then writes 50 and the blended rate is 450, she's going to make about $22,000. Would that be a good January? Yeah. Anybody want to write 100? 150. Don't even worry to raise your hand. Make your mental projection. That means you've got 8 weeks to write the number you have on the board, which then means the variable that determines whether you're going to get it or not is your speed, or ultimately your effort. If you're driving 2 miles an hour, it's going to take you a minute to get around that track, and you've only got 8 weeks to do it, you're not going to make the number that you likely have in your head. So if we take this simple equation, we're going to, and I don't think Adam was here, but don't know if you guys did anything around goal setting, but if I have 2 cars that are evenly matched, and I'm not a big race guy, but as I understand it, in certain races, the cars almost have to be to the same specs, so that the delineator, the differentiator, the thing that makes the difference is the driver. And so the driver is going to be different on 2 things, their skill and their will. Skill is going to be based on everything from experience to aptitude to the things that can be governed by a certain, eye coordination, hand and eye and all those stamina. But if you talk about will, it's a mindset. And the will and the mindset becomes extremely important when you start talking about effort, because there are a lot of people that can do that ain't do. They just ain't doing it. But they could. So I always distill things down to the smallest thing. I might say to an agent, can you pick up the phone? Yes. All right. We're doing good already. Can you dial on that phone? Yes. All right. We're 2 for 2. Can you dial the number that's on this sheet right here that says Miss Jones wants to talk to somebody about Medicare, final expense? Yes. Now, I'm not a big proponent of calling leads ahead, especially if they're final expense. Medicare, you have to. But can you do those things? Yes. I said, so where does the fear start? Because I don't know what to say. Then when we figure out where your stopping point is, then we start to work on your skill. And the best time to work on skill is in the safety of your own home. You can work on something and not be embarrassed in private, but in public, the reason the fear of rejection is the way it is because you haven't practiced. You want to wing it. And winging it then means even if you have the guts to pick up the phone, dial the number, start the conversation, you're going to ramble and mumble and they're going to hang up on you, and then you're going to think, well, these leads are bad. When reality is the leads are good. So at an 8% close rate on digital versus 20% for direct mail, the better your skill is in the hands of some of those agents, they're going to get 16 on digital and 40 on direct mail. But that's through practice. And practice comes because you have the willpower to put in the work. The only thing that's stopping you right now from harvesting a 6-figure income and a 6-figure renewal, I can promise you, because I know too many that are doing it, is your effort. And your effort isn't defined by your skill. Your effort is defined by your will, your mindset. So there's 3 things you need to win the race. You need your gifts. So your gifts would be the ability to sit down, study, read, and pass a HIP, pass the license. Not everybody can do that, but if that's your gift, you got to acknowledge it. It's a small one in the scheme of this environment, but you can't do that. You can't even get to the next gift of, oh, I have the gift of gab. Well, you ain't certified. You ain't getting to talk to nobody. I got a lot of ain'ts in my vocabulary. I am from Georgia, born and raised. And hopefully the Southern drawl ain't bothering y'all too bad. It's the King's English with a Southern twang. Georgia Tech educated, Georgia Tech eradicated. They kicked me out. Actually, I left before they could kick me out, but that's another story for another day. The MIT of the South. But your gifts, what you love to do and do better than most people. How many people in here have a gift? Everybody. Maybe the people around you won't acknowledge it, but you have one. And if you're here, you're gifted enough to have seen an opportunity. Just seeing an opportunity is a gift. Good vision's a gift. I had the bifocals. I had the really big Mr. Magoo glasses. My kids call them Mr. Magoo. And they had the actual line on them. This was like a year ago, and they're like, Daddy, you're just way too sharp and way too rich to be looking that goofy. So I pulled the glass. So I now have progressives. But I now realize what a gift it is to be able to see without the constant up and down, head on the thing. The simplest things can be gifts. And then eventually when the moment of opportunity comes and you're sitting down, you're going to have to exhibit a gift that you may actually have to develop, which is to learn the products, learn what you're doing, have somebody to reach out and phone a friend to. So for those of you, which are the majority of you are 1 to 5 years and some just brand new, don't let the fear of being competent stop you, because the first thing that signals success in a sales environment is chemistry anyway. How do I connect with the person I'm about to talk to? Miss Jones, I don't know the answer. I'm Trish. Oh, Donna. Oh, there's just Trish. That's Donna and that's Sherry. I just got licensed. You can tell them that. When you walk in, you actually by way of Medicare compliance, I'm here as a Medicare agent certified. I don't actually work for the federal government. I'm actually going to receive a commission if you and I do business today. But I want to tell you, you're like the first person I've ever actually sat down with. Do you remember the first time you ever did something for the first time? I did this with somebody once. I said, how careful were you with that first batch of cookies or that first souffle you put in the oven? You watched it like a hawk so it wouldn't fall. I said, I'm probably going to love on you to the point you get sick of me. I said, but that agent that's got 20 years of experience is coming in, telling you what they see, going to tell you what they know, and they're just going to diagnose you without prognosis, without diagnosis. Not saying they'll be wrong. My point is, take whatever stage you're in right now, use it to your best ability, with your best ability, and consider it a gift, even if you're not an expert yet. Second thing is you're going to need your goals. And I hope everybody here has goals, and we're going to do something really fast around goals here in a moment. And then you're going to have, which I think is the thing I really want to focus on, you've got to have grit, which is your willpower, it's your mindset. It is the compelling why all of this is important, to the degree that you're going to do the work that has to be done to develop your gifts, that are going to help you with the what's you want, your goal. Because without a compelling why, the first time a hip gets hard, you're going to shut it down. Most agents don't pass their license test the first time. I won't ask for a show of hands, but some of you in this room took it twice, took it thrice. But you stayed with it. But your why you're doing it, I'm doing this because I got laid off from my job and now I need another income. I'm doing this because I want to send my kids to college. Whatever your why is, you've got to recognize and acknowledge it. So your gifts, and I'm not going to do this very long, but there's some areas where you're just currently incompetent, nothing wrong with the word. There's areas where you're just functionally ready, and then there's areas where you've become excellent. And then for each person in this room, there is a unique ability that can be transmuted into this space, into this place, into this role, into this industry, that can set you apart from everyone else. And in some instances, that could be considered branding, something that makes you valuable, indispensable, and memorable. Valuable, indispensable, and memorable. Unique ability. You've got to refine and define what your gifts are. And then your goals, as you probably know, smart, measurable, specific, they've got to be precise. You can't say, well, I want to have a good AEP. No, what's good? I've got agents right now that expect to write 200 or more in the AEP in 8 weeks. I've got some that for 50 in their first AEP, Trish, would be amazing. But again, it's like the Roger Bannister 4 Mile. If somebody is doing it and it is being done, why not you? But then they've got to be measurable, they must be quantifiable and trackable, achievable, and then they've got to be relevant to your overall goals. I want to get this many asked because of what it will mean to 2023, my transitioning from my job, my ultimate goal of doing X, Y, Z, whatever that is. And then you've got to have them time bound. In the case of the AEP, time is going to happen to you anyway. So I need you to write your gifts and acknowledge what they are, the areas of weakness, which we'll again refer to in a minute, work on and or delegate if you're not good at it. You've got to know what you want. And then at the end of the day, you've got to know why, which to me is what defines your grit, the will to win. Level of gift is determined by your why. And how hard you try is based on why. It's the old thing where you've got this plank across 20 feet and it's 3 inches off the board like a balance beam and you've got to walk across it. You're going to laugh and joke while you fall and come off of it and everybody's going to try it and everybody's good. But if you put that thing 50 feet in the air, most of you won't even get on it. Unless you're like the great Carl Walenda, if anybody remembers the great Walendas from Wide World of Sports, Jim McKay, but that's another story for another day. I'm dating myself. I got one head shake maybe. But if I put the building on fire that you're standing on, you're going to be more compelled to figure out how to get across because the why's bigger. And if I put something valuable on the other side, you're going to cross it. What's happening to most people that have anemic effort is because their why hasn't been magnified to the degree that they're willing to withstand the how and what they have to do for it. And this thing is not easy because there's a gauntlet to run between licensing, AHIP, certification, the compliance. Now you got to record my calls. I got to do X, Y, Z. That means nothing. Because if you've got grit, you'll just figure it out. Okay? So Simon Sinek in his Power of Why, or What's Your Why, says success comes when we wake up every day in that never-ending pursuit of why we do what we do. If you don't know why you're doing this, you need to evaluate. The same way you evaluate your goals, the same way you evaluate your gifts, I need you to evaluate your grit. Why are you doing this? Okay? And then there's Archimedean leverage. And look, I'm again a Georgia Tech dropout, flunk out, kick out, whatever they did to me back in 1987. I'm still scarred by that, as you can probably tell. And it's a funny thing, my daughter has a dual degree from the University of Georgia. He graduated in 3.5 years, speaks 4 languages, sign language. And it's funny, I always say it's poetic justice or grand irony that a Georgia Tech flunk out paid for a Georgia cum laude education. And for those that live in Georgia, you get what I mean. But Archimedes is the one that said Eureka, famous for it. He didn't make the word up. But he also said, give me a lever long enough and a fulcrum on which to place it, and I can do what? Move the world. So when I say Archimedes leverage, you have to, your how is the backbone of what you're doing. Because if you don't know how, all the grit in the world just means you're just going to be floundering but never giving up. Nothing wrong with that till you learn. But how is your gifts? And then the bar is what it constitutes, like a seesaw. Your what are your goals, and it puts downward pressure on your life. But then you've got to have a corresponding counter force, your why, your effort, your grit, to push down on it. So I like to call that Archimedean leverage, where if your why is big enough, the how can withstand it, and then the what's you want out of life are just going to happen. So if you don't have your gifts defined in a written format, I love MBTI, Myers-Briggs. I love Strength Finders 2.0. I love DISC assessments. Every employee that's ever worked for me in every environment, I take them through all 3 of those tests because I want to know who they are, what their gifts are that they may not even recognize. Okay. So 3 questions, and then we're going to get into something real fast here. What are you bringing to this job, to this career? Because it's really not work if it's done right. Make a list of the things that put you in your unique ability zone, and then be able to at least seek out others who can support areas where you're not as strong, which is where I think groups like 360 can support you as you learn using the gifts you do have while you're waiting to develop others. What are you coming to this job, this industry, this opportunity to do? And to me, that means write down your goals. What am I coming here to accomplish? Break them down into a series of actions that need to be accomplished. Review your goals daily and adjust your strategy. The first thing people want to do, because their grit, their willpower lowers across the first adversity, is they lower the target. I want to do 50 this AEP. Well, it's Thanksgiving. I've only gotten a week and a half left and I've written 25. I guess I'll just lower my goal to 30. No, press down the gas. Because each AEP at the very end has what is classically known as a hockey stick. You might write another 25 in the last 10 days if you bear down. But if you simply just lower your goal versus adjusting your strategy, then you've already conceded defeat. And then how are you coming to work? So make a mindset of one of positivity and possibility. Use the I get to metaphor that's out there, then I have to. I get to go see these people. I get to call these leads so that I can get to go see these people, not I have to. And it's subliminal, it's small, but it makes a huge difference, at least for most people. And then celebrate every success, AHIP, getting your license, being a brand new agent, coming to an event like this. You should celebrate the fact that you're sitting here amongst people who've done great things and some people who are just getting started. And I know I'm being modest, but as you start to Google and do a whole bunch of other things, you'll find out who I am. But I love these guys so much, I don't mind coming here. And it's not that about me being so big that I can't, but it is about being so busy that sometimes I probably shouldn't. But back to what Stephen said, I've gone through struggle, success, significance is kind of where things are now, but now I'm focused on legacy, which is if somebody, and actually go to LinkedIn, I'm doing these weird cartoons of a book I once wrote, and they're cute, but if you pay attention, they are profound. Because they're out of experience, stuff I've had to deal with when I was struggling, and then Medicare fell into my lap, and everything changed. Everything. Okay? So, celebrate every success and enjoy the journey. Enjoy it. So now, I know you're like, well, doggone it, you're about to talk about selling hospital indemnity? Yes, I am. Because here's the thing. I'm going to do it. So if it's Trish, right? Or Trisha, sorry. Trisha. Trisha sells 50 Medicare Advantage between October. When can she sell them for the AEP? What dates? Anybody? October 15th to December 7th. I think Tim and Donna had that. So when does Trisha get that $22,000? January 1st, Bert. Maybe 2nd or 3rd. Depends on the carrier. How is she going to pay for the Thanksgiving turkey and the Christmas ham? Who said that? That bird is on fire over here. Hospital indemnity, final expense, might score an annuity. I have more agents die on the vine because they can't outwait the time it takes for the money to come. They did the hard work and got the 50, the 100, and then they're waiting. So from October 1 to October 14th, it's called pre-warming. October 15th to December 7th is selling. January 1st, check. So I'm going to do that. Did you guys talk about hospital indemnity at all today? Yes. Okay, you did. How many people that know Medicare Advantage are selling it? Tim, gotcha. Anybody else? Anybody? Bert, of course, because you said hospital indemnity. Anybody else? So, okay, you selling them? Okay, awesome. And actually, I'm going to do this too. Even though there's a premium, now I'm going to do this I'm going to do it colloquial and I'm going to do it with a little bit of sensitivity. Having developed plans, tens of thousands, maybe I'm closing in on 60, 70,000 agents that I've helped instruct, train, and now I have access to 200,000. I'm not going to take credit for that part of it, but there's great access, is that we've created, I'm going to do it, zero premium junkies. Oh, what do you mean you're charging a premium? A lot of Medicare agents that are zero premium centric couldn't ask for a final expense check and don't like to ask for a hospital indemnity check. But in my mind, a hospital indemnity is as much a consultative educational piece versus it being a you're going to buy this today type of sale. Very similar to Medicare Advantage. And while you've learned about it, I'm going to show it to you with a different context through the hopes, again, that you'll learn a few things along the way, particularly those of you that are new. But hospital indemnity is the best product almost never sold. But I would say to those that raise their hand, Tim, Bert, and a couple of others, you usually just present hospital indemnity and they buy it. As a matter of fact, because I'm going to a very high-level meeting next week for a company that wants to develop a hospital indemnity, and it will be a game changer, and when it happens, you'll get to say, man, Brandon probably did that. Doggone right. Because they know that there's a value to it, but it is being undersold. So really quick, we're going to do some of this really quick because I want to make sure. So the hospital indemnity unique selling proposition. Does the product solve a need? Is it valuable? Is it something they have to have? They can't live without it, indispensable? The real problem with agents is we haven't made it memorable or special. So when you bring those three together, magic happens. Here's the 5 reasons I think agents don't sell it. They believe Medicare Advantage is comprehensive. They believe it covers everything. They're Medicare supplement agents, and they turn their nose up at Medicare Advantage, so they're never going to sell it anyway. What's that third one here? They're used to using zero plan premiums, and asking for a premium is a problem. They're unsure how to compliantly position hospital indemnity in the sales presentation, and then there's the whole training, administrative, and all the other things that come with it. But if I'm, and I'm going to keep picking on Tricia, if I'm picking on Tricia, and she's got to walk the 50 feet across that 3-inch plank, from October 15th to January 1 with no real income, she's got the big enough why. Wait a minute. The only way I'm going to be able to make any money is to sell final expense, indemnity, or an annuity. But if I'm selling Medicare Advantage as I'm going anyway, because my goal is 50, then if I can just learn one product for indemnity, one selling concept, and beat that drum like the little chimpanzee with the Duracell battery, she can present it 70 times, because she saw 70 people to sell 50, just doing some rough conversion. She's going to present the 70, and I'll actually tell you, some of the 20 that don't take the Medicare Advantage will take the indemnity, because the agent that was there before that sold them the best plan fit didn't mention indemnity. But you're going to see 70 presentations, 30% of them will just say, yeah, Tricia, sign me up for the indemnity too. Or sign me up for the indemnity, but I'm not moving my Aetna. But if your urgency of why is because I'm not going to get my $22,000 until January 1, I'm going to be able to get essentially an equivalent check for indemnity all the way through. It's going to be your life. I call it Bridge Over Troubled Water. Art Garfunkel and Simon something. I forgot. I went blank. Thanks, Simon and Garfunkel. Thank you. I should have just done that instead of trying to do the whole name, Malcolm. So here we go. Medicare is the foundation. I'm not going to go hard into this. Everybody knows what Medicare is. Medicare has gaps. It doesn't cover everything. Traditional fee-for-service red, white, and blue does not cover everything. You've got 1556, 233 Part B, 20%. It has gaps. And your job as an agent is to be in the gap band. Now, not to burn rubber on them, and not oops upside the head, but to basically cover the gaps that are there with that red, white, and blue card. So you're now going to show them the options. Medicare Supplement, Medicare Advantage, those are the two hemispherical choices. You've got Medicare Supplement, $325 a month in addition to the $170 they each pay for Part B. But they can afford it. And Med Supps are comprehensive. But they're paying $3,900 a year for the Plan G and the PDP. Yeah, you know me. That's what they're doing. They've got the zero premium. I'll keep saying Aetna because I saw them here. There might have been another carrier here. Hopefully there's not another carrier in the house. We're going to stump Aetna for a little while longer. Zero premium PPO, they pay zero. So when you stack those two side by side, after the supplement people pay $233 deductible for the Part B, they don't pay anything for nothing on the medical side. Now the people on the right are going to pay co-pays. Doctor PCP $10, specialist $45, hospital $265 or $285 a day 1 through 7, ambulance $200, radiation treatment, chemo for cancer 20%, and then they've got a moot there it is, maximum out of pocket of $10,000. So side by side, one pays $3,900 a year on the left to have zeros. The other pays zeros to have gaps. And what's your job in this world? To cover the gaps. All insurance is, in the law of large numbers, is to insure something that you hope doesn't happen, but might. That's all insurance is. Charging somebody a premium to cover something that they hope don't happen, but might. Guess who hopes none of this stuff happens in any form of insurance? Neither side. Unless you're the wife that's husband's got $1 million policy and you hope that sucker dies so you can get the $1 million. But I'm being serious here. Does an insurer for cars want you to have a wreck so they have to pay a claim? And you, as the policy holder, do you want to have a wreck so you can get them to pay a claim? So it is to cover the things that we hope don't happen, but might. Keep that in your mind. So now we've got these two people side by side, $3,900 difference. That looks a little bit crazy. So the question I always like to ask is, who looks smarter? Who looks smarter? It depends. In sickness or in health? I had an answer. Was that you, Tim, or somebody? No? What did you say? It's okay.
The blue people.
The blue people look smartest. And it's good. It's Richard, right?
Yes.
All right, tell me what you think, Richard. Why?
Well, because they're coming out with all this extra money every month.
Exactly. In the case of health, Richard is spot on. Because if they don't have any real needs, they're paying zero. And if they went to the doctor $10, whoopee-doo, that's not a deal breaker or a backbreaker. But if they went into the hospital, if they both got cancer, and it's sensitive for me because I actually have had this happen, if they both got cancer, how much are they going to have to pay out of their pocket? Moop, there it is. $10,000 times 2. And it could actually overlap years. So in health, the people, and Richard is right, in good health, which you can't predict because it's a thing we hope don't happen, but they what? Might. That's all insurance is. Then they're good in health. And the people over here, if they're in good health on the left, they're going to be paying $20,000 for 5 years of good health and basically getting no services paid for. But let's flip that in sickness. If both couples got cancer, the one on the left would pay zero. Nothing from nothing leaves nothing. That's, never mind, Billy Preston, Fifth Beatle, never mind. For those that watch the Beatles special. So they would pay zero, but the ones on the right would be stuck with a $20,000 bill. So in the game of illness, you're talking to people about a chance they take to being healthy and enjoying the low-cost benefits of Medicare Advantage. And believe me really clear, because Richard is right, this is not a demonization of either side. It's just to have you walking into the home agnostic. Mr. and Mrs. Jones, Medicare doesn't cover everything. That red, white, and blue card is wonderful. You work for it. Your FICA was paid in. You got your 170/10 you're paying right now. But that red, white, and blue card has gaps. You have to pay 20%, no limit. You've got to pay $1,500, lay your head on the bed. And then you've got to buy a Part D, and there's deductibles, co-insurance, donut holes, etc. I've got two options for you, Mr. and Mrs. Jones. I've got a Medicare supplement that you would pay the two of you $3,900 a year. But if you ever go to get all these services, you pay the first $233 on the professional. After that, you're covered at 100%, no limits. Now to the Mr. and Mrs. Jones, or the other choices for you to get a zero premium Medicare Advantage, and you'll have co-pays that you'll have to share in, but you will get other things in addition. I think that's another point we're going to make. But they would ask, well, what happens to me if? Well, Mrs. Jones, you're going to have to pay the co-pays that are part of that Medicare Advantage plan. So now how do we combat that? We add hospital indemnity to the MAPD. So in this case, we took the zero premium Medicare Advantage, we added $110 premium for the coverage. Now they're paying $1,320 a year. And this is what they get for the money. They get $300 a day for 7 days, and the benefit refreshes. They get $200 if they go in and out. They can do that several times in the benefit period. But they get a $200 for every ambulance ride, and in the first occurrence of cancer on this policy, they get a $10,000 check paid to them. So now the gap between their finances is a little bit slimmer. We went from $3,900 difference to $2,580, but now the people on the right look a lot more like the people on the left. They go to the doctor, zeros on the left. They go to the doctor on the right, it's $10.45, not a deal breaker or a back breaker. But now if the people on the right go to the hospital, they're in the same exact position as the Medicare supplement. If they go on the ambulance, that $200 that we once saw was paid for by indemnity, covered. If they got cancer, radiation, they would get a $10,000 check to cover the moot, there it is. So all of a sudden, with an indemnity added to a Medicare Advantage, they're going to pay a lot less. And in the case of this population, hospitalization is not a matter of if, it is a matter of, it is not a matter of if, it is a matter of, all right. So now, power of indemnity, it's like a baby med sup. It reduces cost sharing. It gives health benefits because they're still going to get the dental, vision, hearing, flex cards, whatever else they're getting. Medicare supplements don't give all those extras. But they get all the extras of the health benefit. They get the lifestyle benefits, the gym, healthy food cards, memberships, whatever else is available. And then there's flexibility and freedom because the premiums never go up. Once they get in, and there's some guarantee issue opportunity for a lot of these carriers now, once they get in, they're in. And if they moved musical chairs from Aetna to Humana, Humana to United, United to Cigna, Cigna to Anthem, it wouldn't matter. They carry that indemnity with them every time. Because it's their policy. It's not connected to anything. They bought it. So why aren't agents selling more of it? They're used to selling zero plan premiums, and asking for a premium is a skill they haven't developed. They're unsure how to compliantly do it. Anybody seen a scope of appointment? The scope of appointment has what on it? Medicare Advantage, Medicare Supplement, hospital indemnity, or health products. You can't do life at the same time. So now, this is the way I like to do it, and this will be quick. You explain the concept of insurance, that insurance is for things that might happen that we hope don't. But Mr. and Mrs. Jones, have you ever had something that you hoped wouldn't happen that did, and your insurance came through? Mr. and Mrs. Jones, have you ever had something happen to you and you didn't have insurance? Which one of those in the instance of your health would you like to be? Would you want to know you're covered? Or would you just want to take a chance? And that's okay too, because you're not selling it, you're just outlining it. It starts with the scope. And Mr. and Mrs. Jones, the federal government requires me to execute what's known as a scope of appointment, and it governs what we can talk about here today. And one of the things that the government believes should be part of this conversation are your choices. Medicare Supplement, which you may not even talk about, Medicare Advantage, hospital indemnity, dental, vision, hearing. Now, the good news about dental, vision, hearing is a lot of that is going to be baked into the Medicare Advantage plan. We don't have to talk about Part D plans, because if we talk about Medicare Advantage, it's probably included. So that leaves me and you to talk about two things: hospital indemnity and Medicare Advantage plans. What did I just do? I set the stage. Hospital indemnity is already on the table. Now, the Medicare Advantage plan, largely in your area, they're going to be zero plan premium, but we will determine which one's going to be most suited for you. But the hospital indemnity does come at a cost, but it will be very valuable, and I'll describe that as we go. So in their mind, I already set the stage that there's going to be a cost to one of them and a high likelihood that one of them's a zero. So if I am a zero premium junkie and scared to ask for money, I've at least told them I'm going to be talking about, of the 6 things on the scope, we're going to be focused likely on 2. One of them is likely going to be zero premium, and one of them is going to have a premium, but it's going to protect you, because a moment ago you said you'd rather have insurance if you needed it, because you don't want to be out there without coverage. Perfect. So cost sharing review. So Tricia, I'll come back to you, and I know you've not done this yet, but anybody that is selling, there's various ways to sell virtually. But let's say you're at the kitchen table. I'm going to stay there for a second for illustration. They've got a summary of benefits, and you've got one. Now, technically, you can't write on theirs, but I've walked into houses with a red marker, a yellow marker, and a green marker. And I say, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, every time I talk about one of these benefits, if it would be a burden for you to have to pay the cost share, the copay, highlight that in red. If it's one that won't bother you too much, highlight it in yellow. And if it's one that actually brings money to your home, now a cash equivalent, I want you to mark it in green. So I'm going to have those first ones. There's going to be the MOOP. Could you pay $6,700 if something calamitous happened? What color do you think they're going to make that one? Red. But then down the line, dental is $2,000 Aetna. What color are they going to make that one? What color are they going to make a $10 PCP copay? Not a backbreaker, not a deal breaker. So if I get down to the end, and I'm being quick here, and Trisha's got the hospital indemnity on her mind, got a money on her mind and a mind on her money, and she says to them, I already laid out to you that it may cost, but look at what we just did to your household. We actually, between these flex card benefits, dental benefits, OTC, because that's like the equivalent of walking into a CVS, Aetna, and getting everything but bread, milk, eggs, and gummy bears. Bless them. Why don't they let gummy bears be on that list? I love myself some gummy bears. Of course, gummy bear vitamins are on the list, but you don't want to chew a whole bottle of gummy bear vitamins. Yes, I've tried. It's probably not a good thing. But that is, so instead of you going to CVS and spending $60 a month, we just gave you $60 in equivalent. What if my hospital indemnity plan is $60? I just funded it. But if I don't have them seeing it in a way that it's beneficial, all it's going to look like at the end is they heard zero premium, free stuff, and now all of a sudden you're asking me for $60. Does that make sense? Okay. Comprehensive coverage, we've already talked about that. And then funding the policy, the give back plans where they give back part of the Part B. Mr. and Mrs. Jones, this plan gives you back $70 a month, but you know where I think we'd be the best use of some of that money is to cover you with the indemnity as we described. Would you agree? Formulary savings. Mr. and Mrs. Jones, you're currently paying a deductible for tiers 4 and 5. We've done a full drug review, which I would suggest everybody in here do for clients that are on a plan already. You do a full drug review, and I was at the United Healthcare Kickoff in Dallas. 70% of the people in plans right now could save on average $700 to $800 a year simply by having a drug review done through tools like Sunfire, My Medicare Bot, Connecture, Medicare.gov. So, Ms. Jones, do you believe the indemnity is worth the value? Yes. If I can find you the money, is that a good deal for you? Yes. All right, then we're going to go deep now. We got to go deep, Ms. Jones. Don't be mad at me now if I start asking you a ton of questions. I'm going to do a cash equivalent. I just did that with the green, yellow, red. Low income subsidy. Yes, getting them qualified for low income subsidy totally reduces their exposure, their cost out of pocket. MA only because they're not paying some of the same things, but it's a cost savings, but they're going to need that for VA and others. And then Med Sup transition. So somebody's on a Medicare supplement. They're spending $180 a month. It's gotten cost prohibitive. I'm going to move you down, yes, to a zero premium Medicare Advantage plan, but I'm going to add at $60 a month. You're going to still save $120 every month, plus the Part D is baked in. You can have the indemnity, and it feels like the Med Sup you feel like you're giving up. And by the way, because of what's known as the trial right, you can try this for up to 12 months, and if it doesn't work, we'll put you back where you were under what's called a GI guaranteed issue. Got it. So indemnity solves your challenges. It's the AEP bridge over troubled water, as I said about Tricia, from 15 to December 7th. If she could sell 20 of these, 20 times, let's just say an average of 400, 300, 350, Bert for indemnity. I don't want to talk commission too much, but it's probably about the normal Medicare rate. Depends on how much, 350. She sells 20 of them. That's 75, that's 60, what is that? 60, thank you, 7,000. While she's waiting on her 22.5. And I think it's just from presenting it. Okay? Stable revenue, because here's the thing too, for those of you who don't know it, you sell somebody in July, they move from Aetna to United, how much do you get? If you do a plan-to-plan change in July? It's prorated. Tim's on the money. You get half of the 300. You get 150. But the indemnity is still going to pay you, if we use it as an example, 350. So it's a dollar cost averaging on steroids. So if you sold somebody October 1, you're getting on Medicare Advantage, let's say $80. But your renewals will start in January, so it's a good thing, and you're building out your block to get to six-figure renewal, but this makes the rough places smooth. Persistency, and this is going to be important. The more products you have, LIMRA studies, the more sticky your client is. But here's the thing, the clients aren't giving up Medicare Advantage, they're just not using Malcolm to do it every time. Because Malcolm hasn't established himself, like Bert, because he sold him an HI, Bert's got a better chance for them saying, well, we got an HI, we sold it with Bert. Now we got Joe Namath calling us and Jimmy Walker. Bert, we're thinking about changing our place. Well, I'm so glad you called me because I am your agent. You get to keep them in your book. They may move from plan to plan, but they'll stay persistent with you. Then referrals. I had an agent, I said, don't even worry about certifying, just learn how to do HI, and everywhere you go, prompt HI. And he started selling so much HI because the people that were on Medicare Advantage that had not heard about it were sending him to their friends that had a Medicare Advantage. And then he says, but I'm giving up all this Medicare Advantage money. I said, I told you to certify. But point is, you're going to get more referrals because you're servicing at a level most of these folks have never heard of. Most folks don't know what a hospital indemnity companion plan is. And then open enrollment, there's some guaranteed issue. I don't want to go too deep there. And it's business development, because how many people are now going to do ACA? Now, if they're subsidized and all those things and there's no corridor payment, no worries, but ACA works from age 18 to 85, whatever some of these carriers do. So adoption is about you, your will, your mindset, being in a position to say, okay, he just threw 1,000 things out there at me. He got me all excited with his gifts, his goals, his grit, and then he threw a product on me. But it's a product that could make the difference in what happens to your client when they go into the hospital, to your client if they develop cancer. How gratifying would it be? Now, again, I don't like to even speak the word cancer. It's just not something, you want to promote in a fearful way. But if they get it and they get that check, you're going to be a savior in that house. So with that, I will turn it over back to Mr. Duford. I appreciate each and every one of you being here today. I know that was fast and furious. It was a day of action-packed information. But this could be, for those of you that are new or those of you that are renewing, a chance to actually actualize every goal and dream you have, because Medicare has been very, very good to me. I appreciate it. Have a great Friday and be safe going home.